it's a very modern reflex to, well, just spin into a little plastic tube, mail it off to a lab, and let a pie chart tell you exactly who you are.
Right. We absolutely love doing that today.
We really do. We sort of expect identity to function like a math equation, like 30% this, 10% that. It's clean, it's biological, and it's entirely defined by DNA.
Yeah, which is a completely modern lens to look through.
Exactly. But we're looking at a fascinating article today by Mark Wells. It's called The Myth of Biblical DNA, Why True Lineage is About Character, Not Biology.
It is such a provocative piece.
It really is. And Wells argues that applying this, 21st century genetics obsession to ancient texts completely ruins our understanding of history. So our mission for you in this deep dive today is to strip away the biology.
Which is harder than it sounds.
Oh, for sure. But we are going to explore why forcing ancient scriptures into these rigid biological bloodlines fundamentally misreads the past, and how true ancient lineage was always a measure of character rather than chemistry.
Yeah, because forcing a modern Western genetics framework onto these ancient records, it treats profound moral texts like they're just biological birth certificates.
Right.
The ancient mind simply did not view lineage as a laboratory report. Lineage was a framework for appointed covenantal authority.
Okay, so it was more of an assignment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To inherit a lineage meant you were stepping into a vocation, a set of responsibilities and a strict moral standard. It was a mechanism of succession, not a record of reproduction.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because viewing these ancient texts through a modern DNA test, it's kind of like trying to understand a beautiful piece of poetry by, running a chemical analysis on the ink.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy. You completely missed the art.
Right, you missed the point. So how did the vocabulary actually work back then? Because when you and I see words like father and son, we instantly picture a biological family tree.
Sure, we can't help it. But Wells points out that in the linguistic reality of the ancient Near East, those terms operated entirely differently. Well, a supreme ruler would be called father, and his appointed subordinate, so like a regional governor or maybe a military leader, would be referred to as his son.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a title of governance and political alliance, not biology. And we actually still see remnants of this functional language today.
Like what?
Like we call judges your honor, or we address a city official as mayor strictly based on their official capacity. Right?
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
So in the ancient context, establishing someone as a son of Abraham was not a claim about sharing his genetic markers.
It was about action.
Exactly. It meant that person acted like Abraham. They reflected his integrity, they carried his legal authority, and they executed his mission in the world.
It's almost less like taking a 23andMe test and more like becoming a named partner at a prestigious law firm.
Yes, precisely.
You inherit the name and the authority of the firm, not by being born into it, but by proving you can execute its laws, uphold its standards, and win its cases. It's an active, earned designation.
And that operational mindset is really the only way the ancient concept of legal fiction makes any sense.
Right, legal fiction. Explain that for us.
So historians use that term to describe a recognized social agreement that allows a society to function smoothly. It establishes stability and legal rights completely regardless of biological facts.
Because survival was communal back then, right?
Highly communal. If a tribe's leader died without a clear successor, that power vacuum would invite rival groups to attack, or it would spark a brutal civil war.
Right, total chaos.
Exactly. So a legal fiction, like a king formally adopting a trusted general as his son, that was an immediate legally binding mechanism to transfer military and economic authority without needing a biological heir.
Wait, though. If these ancient writers were just drafting legal fictions and making up non-biological genealogies to justify who was in charge, isn't that just, ancient political propaganda?
That is a really common modern pushback.
Yeah, like how is that a moral covenant and not just ancient rulers rewriting history to hold on to power?
Well, because a legal fiction in the ancient world wasn't a secret deception. It wasn't a forged document meant to trick the public. It was a transparent, legally codified contract.
Oh, so everyone was in on it.
Right. Everyone understood the mechanism. The authority wasn't legitimate because the public was fooled into believing a biological lie. The authority was legitimate because the covenant was publicly enacted and structurally binding.
Okay, that shifts things completely.
And the source material highlights a great example of this with the story of Jacob adopting his grandsons, Ephraim and Manasseh.
Right, the sons of Joseph.
Yeah, born in Egypt.
Right.
Jacob formally elevates them to the status of his own full sons. He completely bypasses strict biology to grant them the exact same economic standing, land rights, and tribal authority as his direct children.
He modifies the inheritance structure just by declaration.
Exactly.
He completely subordinates biology to assigned authority, which, immediately clarifies another major point of confusion for modern readers: the two entirely different biblical genealogies of Jesus.
Oh, yes. People get so tripped up on that.
Constantly. Skeptics point to those conflicting family trees as definitive proof of a massive historical error.
But the perceived error only exists if you treat the texts as conflicting genetic ledgers.
Right.
The ancient writers were actually tracking legal rights and royal succession through different covenantal avenues.
So they had different goals.
Exactly. One genealogy might track the biological descent, while the other tracks the legal claim to a specific throne through adoption or levirate marriage.
Which was when a man marries his deceased brother's widow to carry on the brother's legal lineage, right?
Yes. So both lineages are entirely accurate within an ancient framework. They're establishing legal custody of a title rather than genetic inheritance.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. If legal fictions were the accepted structural way to manufacture legitimacy and secure succession, the ultimate stress test of that system would be a leader who didn't even bother to utilize a family tree at all.
Yes, and the text gives us exactly that.
Right, with the figure of Melchizedek. The author refers to this as the Melchizedek exception. This is a guy who arrives in the ancient records explicitly described as having no genealogy, no father or mother.
What's fascinating here is that to a modern mind searching for a birth certificate, or even an ancient mind expecting a robust legal fiction, Melchizedek should be entirely illegitimate.
Because he has no paper trail.
None. He possesses no biological claim and no legally adopted lineage. Yet within the narrative, he holds one of the highest possible spiritual offices.
Yeah, he's presented as a priest of the Most High.
Exactly. Carrying such immense authority that even the patriarch Abraham defers to him.
Which is wild. The text is deliberately putting a massive roadblock in front of our obsession with the ancestral credentials.
It really is.
So, presenting the most spiritually authoritative figure in the narrative as someone with zero recorded lineage, that definitively shatters the requirement for a biological or even a legal birth certificate.
It's the ultimate proof.
Yeah, it proves divine authority in these narratives is an appointment based on a spiritual office and personal character. It operates completely independent of parentage.
And applying that spiritual lens radically alters how we are meant to interpret other foundational narratives too. Particularly the famous rivalry between Abraham's two sons.
Oh, man, yeah. Modern debates project thousands of years of contemporary geopolitical baggage onto that story.
They do. They frame it exclusively as a genetic, racial, or territorial struggle between two distinct bloodlines.
We turn an ancient moral text into a justification for modern border disputes and ethnic superiority.
Which is a tragedy, really.
But the source material completely rejects that reading. The texts are not utilizing these two sons to highlight a biological struggle for supremacy. They serve as a physical illustration of a profound spiritual reality.
Right, a metaphor.
Yeah, a metaphor for the universal contrast of right versus wrong. It represents the divergence between walking in alignment with the Creator's ethical demands versus walking away from them.
The connection between the historical prophets throughout these texts was never intended to be mapped as a genetic chain.
Right.
It is a monotheistic spiritual lineage. Their authority was never passed down through a strand of DNA. It was a divine appointment bestowed upon them based strictly on their discipline, their moral choices, and their response to a calling.
So when you analyze the scriptures as a record of moral covenant rather than a genetic ledger, the structural logic of the ancient world finally just snaps into focus.
It really does. Everything starts to make sense.
But that brings up the lingering problem we face today. If the textual evidence so clearly points to covenant and character over biology, why do we fiercely cling to the bloodline myth?
That is the big question.
Why are modern societies so utterly obsessed with proving they possess the right genetics or the correct ancestral heritage?
Well, this raises an important question about human psychology, and the article tackles that exact contradiction by introducing the insights of two renowned Afrocentric historians and anthropologists, Dr. Ivan van Sertima and Dr. John Henrik Clarke.
Okay, what did they find?
Their life's work really focused on analyzing how human beings manipulate history and identity for psychological comfort.
Psychological comfort, right.
Yeah. And Dr. van Sertima argued that humanity suffers from a profound miscalculation regarding what actually constitutes greatness.
Meaning what?
He believed we need a fundamentally new vision of history, one that stops judging the spiritual or intellectual height of a civilization merely by its material remains.
Oh, I see. We are obsessing over the wrong metrics entirely. We look at the colossal monuments of Rome or the pyramids of Egypt or, in our modern context, the specific genetic markers in a DNA test.
Right, the physical evidence.
Yeah, and we use those physical artifacts as proof of a civilization's superiority.
Exactly. But Dr. Van Sertima proposed that a civilization must be judged instead by the moral and ethical responsibility it demands of its people.
Because monuments crumble.
They do,
Yeah.
and biological lineages dilute over millennia. But a robust moral framework that requires constant daily exertion to maintain.
That takes actual work.
Yes. And his colleague, Dr. John Henrik Clarke, took this concept directly into the realm of individual human psychology. He diagnosed how people use rigid, inherited identity as a mechanism for avoidance.
The source actually quotes Dr. Clarke directly on this, and the phrasing is just striking. He says, anytime you look at a people who are deeply religious but lack morality, you are looking at a people who have used religion as a hiding place.
A hiding place, yes.
People want the connection to the divine, but they do not want the discipline of character that the divine demands.
That concept of religion as a hiding place perfectly captures the psychological utility of the biological myth. The article actually refers to this behavior as the spiritual hustle.
The spiritual hustle. It is incredibly pervasive today.
It really is.
It's basically the act of using a rigid inherited identity, whether that is a specific biological lineage, a religious label, or a cultural heritage, to just shield yourself from the burden of personal responsibility. Like if my DNA inherently makes me special, or if the religious title I was born into automatically makes me chosen, well, then my actual behavior is irrelevant.
Right, you're untouchable.
Yeah, I am insulated from critique. I don't have to practice empathy, I don't have to show integrity, and I don't have to cultivate discipline. My bloodline does all the heavy moral lifting for me. It's like wanting to hold up the championship trophy without ever bothering to go to practice.
That is exactly it. Arguing vehemently over a family tree is infinitely easier than transforming your own behavior.
Oh, definitely.
When you recognize that the ancient requirement for being a son meant actively executing a mission and perfectly reflecting the absolute integrity of the father, you realize the immense daily friction that standard requires.
It's exhausting.
It is. The biological myth persists because it offers the ultimate shortcut. You get the prestige of the reward without the friction of the rigor.
So what does this all mean for us today? The author distills this historical and psychological analysis down to two distinct paths forward for anyone navigating their identity.
The lazy route and the real route.
Right. The lazy route is exactly what Dr. Clarke warned us about. It involves clinging to an unprovable DNA lineage or a rigid tribal label specifically because it requires zero personal exertion. You just rely on an assumption of superiority that you simply inherited.
But the real route is what the ancient texts were meticulously attempting to document through their covenants and their legal fictions.
And that's much harder.
Much harder. The real route demands doing the actual grueling work of spiritual alignment. It means developing high moral character and earning your authority through your daily actions, recognizing that biological descent is absolutely meaningless without behavioral assent.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the overarching argument of this deep dive into Mark Wells's analysis is that true legitimacy, in any meaningful or divine sense, simply cannot be inherited through blood.
It cannot be quantified by a laboratory.
Right. It is a status that must be earned through a lifetime of morality, responsibility, and vocation. The historical figures we revere were not profound because of their genetics. They were profound because of their choices.
Moving away from blind reliance on biological superiority allows us to actually look at history through the lens of character.
Which changes everything.
It does.
Yes.
The ancient world understood a fundamental truth that our modern hyper-scientific era has largely forgotten. Biology may provide a starting point, but character is the exclusive destination.
Wow.
The legal fictions they utilized were a sophisticated structural acknowledgement that who you choose to be and the communal responsibilities you choose to shoulder matter infinitely more than the circumstances of your birth.
We find tremendous comfort in that little plastic tube. We love the illusion that our identity can be cleanly mapped out by a laboratory, just reducing the complexity of the human experience to a simple chemical analysis of the ink.
It's an easy answer.
It is. But these ancient texts and the historians who study them, They're challenging us to look up from the ink and actually engage with the poem. They're demanding we recognize that the inherited labels we wear offer absolutely no protection if our character cannot sustain their weight.
That is the real test.
So I want to leave you with this. Take a hard look at the labels you proudly wear today, your cultural, professional, or spiritual identities. Are you truly doing the daily work to earn them, or are you just coasting on a modern-day legal fiction of your own making? If you had to prove your lineage by your actions alone before the sun sets today, who would you be?